somehow on. I don't know. Today's discussion is to provide you guys an update on the project. I know you had some questions and concerns, and so Jason is on vacation today, so we have Abdul and Rob, both from McCormick Taylor, here to answer any questions. Go ahead, Abdul.
My name is Abdul Akbari. I was the designer for this project. I was involved with the design. So if there's any specific questions, I know there are some concerns brought up by Mr. Warren and Mr. Jim. So just wanted to, if there's any other questions that you guys may have, we'll definitely be able to try to answer them.
Yeah, and just to add, my name is Rob Marchetti. I'm with McCormick Taylor as well. I'm just filling in for Jason and help facilitate if there's any conversations or any kind of meetings that need to be set up this week. I will help get those set up while Jason's on vacation.
Okay. Keely, is Warren on and able to listen? You're muted.
He's not on yet. We're still waiting on him.
Okay.
Oh, here he is. I just admitted him.
Okay, great.
Oh, there.
Okay. Warren. We just did quick introductions, Warren. But what I would like to do to try to make sure that we address questions, how about we first take the first two that I know we received emails on from Warren and Jim, you commented, and if there's anything in addition, then we can have the discussion. And Abdul has the ability to share his screen so he can actually pull the document up. But first, let's talk about the right turn lane. So I know there was some question with regards to that. So I wanted to let you all know that back in May, when we had the tropical storm Bertha, I believe, when she came through unexpectedly, she came through along when we had high tide, we had a lot of water at that right turn lane that we were able to see. And so Jason came out and he walked the area. I was out there, Brian and the contractors, and we looked at that ponding and to try to determine what can be done or what was the issue. He put together a small kind of report, and Rob and Abdul can discuss this, but he basically presented the town with 3 scenarios. And the first scenario was to adjust the cross slope of the turn lane, which was going to cost roughly $2,500. The second scenario was to add an overflow pipe off of the manhole, the existing manhole 1, which was going to cost a little under $5,000. And then the third scenario was to install an overflow swell, which by doing that, we knew or felt that it would probably eliminate all ponding in the right turn lane. That total cost was going to be roughly about $156,000, but that was going to require permitting through DHEC, OCRM, and maybe they said may need detailed coordination due to new storm drain. So the town decided not to go with scenario 3. I think Brian, remind me, or Rob or Abdul, I thought we went with scenario 2. The reason why we decided not to go with scenario 3 is that based on the recommendation of McCormick Taylor and SCDOT standards with regards to allowing some pond in the right turn lane, that because it was not a through lane and not generating a lot of traffic, that it would be okay to have some ponding there. We also informed the resort of that, and because of potential future development of that site, we felt that we would be able to address that issue down the road. So I will let Rob and Abdul and you all, let's just have a discussion about the right turn lane only. We'll then talk about the bike path after that discussion. Is that okay with you guys? Committee?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Rob and Abdul, do you want to kind of take it away, and then you guys can have some dialogue with the committee members?
Yeah, Stephanie, thanks, Stephanie. I believe that is what we had talked about, and what you and Jason in the conversation going through the SCDOT standards are. Now, I think there's still some questions out there whether or not maybe some of the construction may have exacerbated some of the ponding in there. Maybe there's some things that, you know, even though that it's going to pond, maybe it's ponding a little bit more than what's supposed to be out there. And I think that's kind of an investigation that we had talked about, Stephanie, of getting back out to the site and just kind of taking a look at it. If there's something where maybe not been constructed properly, or if there's some opportunities to kind of push some of that water just to kind of not keep it in there ponding for so long, that's something we're gonna look at. But obviously, as Stephanie said, we're not going to eliminate any of that. We're meeting the standards, but unless we go through that third scenario, which at this time was not something we're looking at.
Stephanie,
Okay.
you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was there any questions? I think, Jim, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I went out there this week and looked at it after seeing Warren's concerns. And that pond will always be there. There's no way for it to drain out. However, there is an existing drain about 90 feet west of that ponding area. And it is downhill of that ponding area. And it looks, and half of that 90 feet is paved due to the turn into the field there, and half of it is going to be landscaped, it looks like. So it looks to me like, it always amazes me how little I appreciate the cost of things, but it looks to me like a fixable thing if we were to rework that turn-in area there and put a swale that would direct the water in the natural downstream flow to that drain. Wouldn't have to be too big of a dip, too noticeable of a dip, if at all, in the turn-in lane, but it would have to be reworked. Now, I know an option could be to just fill it in, and filling it in with asphalt might cause the flow to go in the downstream direction to that drain. But the one experience I have with patching over an area like that was with my home driveway, and it did not look good. It looked like a patch, looked like an afterthought. So I'd leave that up to the experts if that was going to be an option, a viable option.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Jim, that could be something that we take a look at a little bit further. Once again, kind of looking at everything on paper is one thing. It looks like it works perfectly, but once you get into the construction aspect, and if there's like a little tenth of a foot difference, could cause, certain situations. So we'd like to take a look at this a little bit further based on the dialogue and the comments received. And it's something we would like to try to take a look at and see what we can do to see where that drain is in that 90 feet and see what we can be sort of, like I said, reworked, and kind of just come up with some scenarios to see if there's anything that's even feasible, or if there is feasible, what is that going to take and what's going to cause and what's the cost associated going to be.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. This is David. I went out and looked at it also. And my first impression was that entrance to the field, it's basically concave as opposed to convex. So, I mean, that's just, I don't know how that would have happened. On paper or construction, it looks like it was designed to be a swimming pool. It's so deep and it just stays there forever. So even if it were convex, at least the water wouldn't pond on the entrance itself. It would be somewhere else. I'm not necessarily sure you can get rid of the ponding entirely, but it shouldn't be on that asphalt. It just, it looks bad. It looks like a mistake.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments on that? Will or Warren or Steve?
Well, I think I probably need to go over and take a look at it myself. Get out and walk it. I haven't done that. I've just been looking at it as I go by. So I think I'll go look at it this morning.
Okay. Steve, do you have any comments on it?
No, my son has my transit, so I haven't got anything I can go look at it with.
Okay, Warren? Oh, I don't think he can probably hear us. Okay,
Maybe he's on mute.
yeah. Well, hopefully, Warren? Oh, I hear someone in the background, but.
Warren, touch the upper right-hand corner of your screen to try to get yourself off of mute.
Well, while he's working on trying to unmute himself, Abdul or Rob, do you guys want to address anything else with regards to the right turn lane before we talk about the bike path? Or do you?
The only thing I could just add is, we had talked prior to this meeting about just getting out there and doing a little bit of investigation ourselves. We want to take a look at the design versus what has actually been constructed. And if there's some things that we see that we can recommend, Mr. David had some concerns that we want to try to, look at a little bit closer as well, to see exactly what, is transpiring out there and see how we can sort of alleviate that. I think until we really get into investigations, and it could entail some little additional surveys just to kind of pick up some points out there to see exactly what we have. That's something we just need to look into a little bit further.
Okay. And I think you guys are going to try to come out this week or maybe next week, right?
Yeah, we were going to try to do it this week. Obviously weather depending. I think it was try to best to see, let's look at it in sort of in action with the, rainstorm. Obviously this week seems to be a sort of a drier week, but, obviously just always pop up thunder showers, that type of stuff. But, I was going to wait till Jason came back. Obviously Jason's a really good pulse of this. If that's something we can wait till he comes back and then really dive into it. And we had shared about even going out and getting some cross slopes with a smart level, just to look at some of the percentage of the slopes out there to make sure that, nothing is being, really deviated from what the plan was too. So we want to do a little bit more investigation work out there to see what was constructed.
Okay. Now let's turn over to the bike path. I know there are some concerns with regards to it sloping towards the turn lane as well as the curb. So I'll let you guys kind of talk about the design and idea behind that, and then we'll open up for questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw the emails that are the questions that Warren sent.
Yeah.
You can address that.
I was going to say, Abdul, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Yeah, I mean, per plan, the trail is supposed to be sloping towards the roadway. If we had to slope it the other way, I mean, the 2% meets ADA and all the criteria. So, but if we had to slope it away from the roadway, the water would just pond on the right side of the trail. So that was the reason for sloping it towards the roadway. And the trail is 8 feet. It pretty much, the trail within the project limits along Kiowa Island Parkway is 8 feet. It meets criteria. So we have that 8 feet there. We have the cross slope. And then the other reason is, the reason why it's sloping towards the roadway is we have a little mini swale in between the roadway and the trail itself for drainage purposes. So we have that. And the reason why the curb was proposed on the right side was to keep everything within the right of way. We had a pretty tight schedule with the advertisement. We didn't want to go through the right of way acquisition process to have the trail, no curb on the right side and just grade it out, or a wider trail. So that was the thought process and the ideas behind the design of the trail itself.
Who would we need the right of way from? Who owns the property that would have asked for permission to move that bike path?
So the right of way is owned, of course, by the resort, because we put our bike path right up. We've used all of our right of way to put that bike path in. We have been in conversations with the resort, not to acquire some additional right of way, just because we weren't sure if down the road we wanted to be able to landscape that, because we had no right of way left to do any landscaping, or if down the road, when the resort decides to develop that site, if we wanted to relocate the bike path, that we will have some additional right of way. We actually started that conversation with them when the project started. And so right now I'm in the process of looking for a real estate attorney to start that ball rolling with regards to getting additional right of way.
Well, my further comments are, I agree with Jim Gilliam 100%. I think that's a very dangerous situation. It's there. We've had an accident already here on Kiowa with somebody getting off the bike path and going down a hill, very serious injuries. That bike path gets busy and somebody's going off the low side where the swale is. They're not going to stop on that swale. They're going to be right out on the pavement in the roads, particularly if it's children. I think as a stopgap measure, maybe some type of a guardrail, something up there, but that's an accident waiting to happen. And I think on the other high side, there should have been a gentle upslope to prevent it as opposed to a curve. These are bicycles, not cars. A bicycle hitting a curve is an accident automatically. It's not going to be a maybe.
So I just wanted to remind everyone that with regards to that area that is currently right now not landscape, based on our landscape plan, we can talk and make sure that we put in, which we were planning on doing, putting in a little bit thicker vegetation there in that section. But I also talked with the mayor last week about it, that for a temporary fix that we can add some sort of guardrail along that edge as well. But our landscape plan does entail adding some landscape there, but we can look at adding some thicker shrubbery or some other thicker type landscape there to help.
And as Stephanie alluded to, I think there's going to be some further dialogue about whether or not maybe regrading that would be an option. I think that's something that's going to be a little bit further down the road because of the process with that, but I think that should be sort of factored into it as well. So we're going to continue having that dialogue with Stephanie and how we want to look at that as far as an option, maybe more of a permanent solution until something else is being developed for this property.
I can't add much new, but I think that curb, not only physically but psychologically is a concern. With the elevation of the bike path a couple of feet or so, 1 to 2 feet above the road elevation, it sort of gives a feeling of insecurity, like walking around a path around the side of a cliff, like at the Grand Canyon or something. It's not nearly that extreme, but it's just psychologically something that could make people nervous. And you've also got, this is going way out there, but centrifugal force is taking you into the road if you're going really fast and stuff like that. But I think you do need to have a place to ditch your bike if necessary, and that curb takes that option away. Of course, it would be better to have more real estate there, but I think immediately that curb needs to be taken out. I know we could do some studies and all, 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months, get it all taken care of. But I think that curb, I mean, I'm a bike rider, and that scares me, little kids, and, you know, things happen with people trying to pass each other, especially little kids. And I just fear that something really bad could happen there.
I have an additional comment to that, to agree with Jim, that it might be 8 feet wide in existence, but it's visually less than that, because if you're getting near that 2-foot drop on that side of the road, that you're not going to want to ride within a foot of that edge. So effectively we have about a 5.5 to 6 foot bike path in that area because of that drop. Anybody on that side is not going to get anywhere near that edge. And if they do get in the middle of the road and somebody's coming the other way and they go off that edge, we're going to have a serious accident.
Well, once again, what we'll do is we'll work with Stephanie and the team and look at some of the options that if we take it out, if there's regrading that's required, whether or not there's any kind of right of entry or whatever right of way impacts that associated with, we could take a look at that and just identify what those impacts are and then present it. And then from there, we can decide if that's something we want to obviously address. It seems like the concern mostly is the curbing and the perception of You know, obviously, is it makes it look less than 8 feet, and then you also got the drop off too. And as part of this too, we're also going to look at and evaluate the cross slope of the bikeway itself to make sure it was constructed to 2% maximum cross slope and nothing above that. Because obviously, as Mr. Jim said, you know, if you're kind of being pushed out to the side, centrifugal force is pushing out toward the roadway. If it's at a higher percentage rate, then obviously that does have a perception of, you know, you are getting pushed out that way. So we want to make sure it's not above 2% as well.
I had another thought. At the entrance to Cacique, we have stop signs in the bike path. There are no stop signs here. What was the deciding criteria for that?
I don't think there was any deciding criteria for that. They were just installed, which we can just install signs there.
I mean, I know there's not much traffic going in and out of the field, but there's a lot of equipment sitting in there that's probably going to move in and out at some point. And it only takes one time for someone to have an accident. So I don't know. I'm sensitive to putting too many stop signs on the bike path, but I just wonder what the group thinks about that. It seems to me it would be a safety thing to do.
It wouldn't be a problem. The town could just install them since it is an intersection. Normally, of course, we install the stop signs when it's an active intersection. Obviously, that's going to be an active intersection when that's developed. Until then, it'll just sit until just in use for the PGA. It may not be active for 2 or 3 or 5 years before that site's developed. But definitely when the site's developed, it made that whole section might be re-engineered, may even have a traffic light there. Not saying we will, but that entire section will probably have to be looked at once we know for sure what's being developed there. But again, for the time being, we can put a stop sign there, but that section will only really be active for what, 7 days, 5 or 7 days for the PGA.
You might give a thought to temporarily, instead of putting a stop sign, because we've got stop signs at our leisure trails all over the island, and most of the bikers just whiz right through. You might give some thought to putting a caution sign there, since there's going to be so little traffic. We still would like to alert the bikers and the walkers that they need to be looking out at that entrance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we can definitely do a number of things to include that, you know, adding more or add landscape, or look at the landscape that we're going to add there. If we need to do some guardrail, to put caution signs, stop signs, different things at that intersection to make it safer.
I think even though there's minimum traffic going in and out, there should be a stop sign for the vehicles coming out of the field. That would be just a little bit extra. I agree with Will that a caution sign is going to be better than a stop sign for bikers, but even though we have very little traffic coming out of the field, there should be a stop sign there anyway.
No question.
I agree
And
with that.
back to Rob's comments about the 2% either way, even if that slope was the other way, it doesn't alleviate any of the problems that Jim and I have about the curb and the drop off on the other side. I mean, that could be banked like a racetrack, and it's still a concern on the outside of that curve. Anybody goes off the edge is going to be in the road.
Okay. Steve, do you have any comments?
Nope.
All right. Just so you guys know, I've been communicating with I hear a lot of background noise. I don't know if that Warren. Oh, I know Keely's on the phone with Warren. He can hear everything. He just cannot communicate with us. So I asked her that if he has any questions for her, that she can ask them on his behalf. Is there anything else you all like to talk about? I think in terms of the parkway, we can update you on the landscape project, but anything on the Parkway?
I have a couple of comments. Is there a new schedule? And way back when, we talked about the seam in the pavement just past Casik in the middle of the road. It's still there. I wonder if there's any way to do anything about that seam.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so banks still, we're gonna have them come back out, and take a look and fix the, so I'm sure you've driven over those manholes on the, new outbound through lane. It's kind of a little bit bumpier than we would have hoped. So they're gonna be coming back out to smooth out, those couple of sections on that outbound through lane. And when they do that, well, before they do that, I'm going to chat with them and see what they can do about that cold seam right there, because it is kind of less than pleasant to look at when you're driving down the Parkway. And the rest of the road looks really great. I think we all can agree on that. So if we can just dress up a couple of these issues, I think we'll be in pretty good shape aesthetically. But yeah, I will be bringing that up to banks to see what they can do about that.
And this other question schedule.
Right. So, well, I guess I'll just kind of wrap in a quick update as well too. So last week we installed we milled in the rumble strips. Hopefully you haven't noticed them. That means you're staying on the road, but the rumble strips are there. And I drove over them intentionally, and I think it's going to be a lot better than what we had before, that kind of topical chatter strip. But those are in. And then last night was the first night we installed some of the shoulder stabilization. It went pretty well. It's a very tedious installation process. And I think it's going to take them just a little bit, well, not longer, but it's just, it's kind of a tricky process. Anyway, update, we're going to be done with the shoulder stabilization this week. And then in which case we'll just be left with the striping, with the exception of maybe dressing a couple of the areas on the road, and whatever we do with the bike path turn lane, if there's any further designing and construction that needs to happen with that. So, without any of the kind of corrections or fixes that we need to do, the striping, my understanding, will be next week, that we can get the striping down, in which case we'll be, essentially done with the original project. But I will get a definite date on when we're going to be doing that striping. And the striping could depend on if we need to do any corrections to any parts of the road too. So we'll have to just wait for an update on that.
Any other questions about the Parkway repaving? Jim, I know that Warren had, and Warren can hear us, I know he had some list of questions, and so did you with regards to that. Do you feel like they have been answered or addressed? I know they're going back out this week and going to look at those.
I think so. I think I might add that Warren has never looked so good on Zoom. But I think his issues have been addressed. Maybe he's saying something different to Keely, but I think so. And my issues have been addressed. At least they've been recognized. So I appreciate that.
Okay, so I think our homework back to you guys from McCormick Taylor, if they get out this week, is that they will look at the right turn lane, and whatever they come up with, I'll have them share it via report or email so I can share that with you all, as well as the bike path with regards to the curb. Is that, I see you shaking your head, Rob.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say is, I mean, obviously we don't have a lot of answers for you guys, but I think we have to go back out and sort of investigate it. It's on our dime for doing that. So, but we'll certainly get out there this week. Hopefully there is an afternoon pop-up thunder shower. We could really take a look at it and get maybe like a nice video of understanding a little bit about that, the flooding situation, but obviously the bike lane as well. So there's some field work that we'll have. So we'll have some staff out there, in safety vests and hard hat, just, doing some of the studies this week.
Okay, great. Is there any other questions with regards to repaving for Abdul or Rob? Okay, I'm just gonna, I'd like to do just a very quick update on the landscape project. So Town Council approved Artigues as the landscape contract that won the bid. And so we're still trying to finalize the contract. So I actually got an email that popped in. So hopefully we'll have the contract finalized not hopefully, we will have the contract finalized and signed this week. While we were working on contract cleanup, Artigues did work with their vendor and to start growing some of the plants that's in the proposed plan. So that process did start when council approved it. So hopefully we're not too far
Can you
behind.
hear?
Yeah. Keely, I can hear you.
I've got Warren on my phone.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just lost train of thought, but hopefully because of the delay in the repaving process, they can't start work until after we're completely done. But hopefully the goal is that the landscape project should be completed by November. If any of you like to see the site plan or the landscape plan, I can send those drawings back to you all. So council is basically, we had them look at it in 4 different sections of the parkway. And we had that done because we were looking at materials that they were putting in, the quantities, but also the cost. So we made a little bit of modifications to what we call section 1 of the plan, which is around the roundabout up to the first entrance of the resort property. And a reason why is because a lot of the landscape that was being proposed, or some of the landscape that was being proposed, was actually on Freshfield's property and not town's property. We didn't realize that. Our sign, when you come off the roundabout, we always thought that our sign was on town's property, but it's actually on Freshfield's property. We've just been maintaining that for all these years. So we had to make some adjustments there, as well as in what we call section 2, which is where the new right turn lane, because we were showing landscape on the resort's property and we didn't have permission to do that. So we had to make some adjustments here and there. So hopefully, but when it's all said and done, we think we'll have a good landscape project there along the parkway. Any questions? So Keely, you have Warren. So if Warren has any questions, or I don't know if you're asking them or Warren asking them, but please feel free to jump.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Warren.
Okay, hey, thanks. So I really apologize for this, and I'll get it today. I have a couple questions, if I may.
No, go ahead.
Okay, one is the landscape project. I did not see any typical section showing how the town would like to see the grading from the edge of pavement out.
Go ahead.
Okay, the second question is pavement traffic striping as you leave the island and you get to the first left-hand turn. Something's got to be done about that striping there, because you come up over a little rise and you cannot see the lane arrangement, and there are cars passing in that left turn lane. Something to look at.
Okay, Brian, did you want to address that? They haven't finished, that striping right now is just temporary. They haven't put the permanent striping in. Is that correct, Brian?
That's correct. Warren, I know what you're talking about, and yes, everything is permanent, and perhaps they could have added a little bit more to the permanent striping. However, and I can send you over the striping plans to make sure,
It doesn't show it.
that everything looks sound. But yes, they're going to be doing the permanent striping. That's going to be a lot more detailed.
Well, that doesn't
Again,
show on
hopefully
the
next
plan.
week. I'm sorry.
It does not show on the plans.
What doesn't?
Any additional striping out there in that area.
So you're saying what's down on the road now is what the final plans
In that
show?
area.
Okay, well, we can take a look and revisit those if we need to. Because if we need to add stripes, that's not as big of an issue
You
as.
gotta add turning arrows or something, because people are gonna pass there.
Oh, there's gonna be turning arrows. Yeah, the turn arrows are in the plans.
Yeah, you got 2 of them.
Right.
Well, you may need more, because you can't see them until you're on top of them.
But I think what you're saying though, Brian, I know what he's saying. So all the striping and everything's not in yet. It's not done. The permanent, the final, is it?
Right. So my understanding is that what's down there now is just bare minimum to kind of keep traffic flowing. And then when the permanent striping comes in, there's going to be more than what's on the road right now. The permanent striping is just because no one's using either one of the turn lanes except for the construction crews at this point. So I think they were really, the initial intent was to kind of move people over to that outbound through lane, which is what we did with the cones for over the 4th of July weekend. And then Warren, you're right. I mean, right now that does seem kind of like a passing lane, but there will be, that'll be a solid white line delineating that as a turn lane along with turn arrows.
Okay.
What I heard,
Real quick, like you did construction schedule, reset manhole collars. Some of those manhole collars are terrible.
Right. We did chat about that. You might have missed it, but I did send an email to Banks and telling them that we would like to have that dressed up. So the issue was that being that outbound through lane is on a super elevation. I think that was kind of the reason why it came off as bumpy as it did initially, but they told us that they could go back and get that smoothed over, at least the ones that were really bad.
Okay. There's also some ancillary flooding where the bike path, the new bike path meets the old bike path out there by Fresh Fields.
On which side?
On the left-hand side, as you're leaving coming towards the island on the right-hand side.
Right. Is it before the fresh?
Basically, it's just about in that area of where the new bike path meets the old bike path. It's a low section in there.
Okay. Well, so McCormick Taylor is going to be coming out to take a look, and they can make sure that their representative takes a look at that. And if you want to give me a more detail, like if you can pick out a station number off of the plans, then we can pass that along to McCormick Taylor.
Move to the end of the new bike path.
Okay, that sounds good.
Right there.
Rob, you got that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we
We'll
got
take a
it.
look at that as well.
One other thing, I'm kind of curious on how the contractor is compacting the stabilized shoulder material.
They're driving over it.
It's supposed to be a stabilized base.
Rob-
Rubber in it. It's going to compact it.
Robert, Rob or Abdul, can you guys address that based on your construction drawings?
I cannot. Abdul, you're a little bit more familiar with the project. Can you elaborate on that?
On the stabilized shoulders, you're referring to that,
Yeah.
Stephanie?
How do you compact that material?
I can take a look at the spec, and I can let Stephanie know, and she can let you guys know. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Okay, if you can just send that to me in an email and then I can shoot that out to the group, that'd be great.
I'm just gonna, I have just one last kind of a criticism is if that area had been designed properly in the first place and contoured, we would not have a bike path issue today. We would have known about this 6 months ago, 3 months ago, and the town could have approached the resort at that time. So, but I apologize for having to do this by phone.
It's all right. No, we can hear you fine.
I'd just like to follow up on one thing Warren said with Brian there. Brian, I think Warren was saying that the way he read the plans, the striping was in the right place for the final striping. So maybe that's something you could double check if you think we need more striping.
I will double check that. Again, we've got a little bit of time, and I think they were just kind of trying to save some paint to see, because I don't know for sure that what's down there now is indicative of what is going to be replaced with the permanent striping. They might have just done kind of like minimal paint on the ground for now, but yes, I will follow up and make sure that those final plans show what we intend to have put down on the road.
And Brian, I'll just add, if there's anything that you see that's may not be correct, let us know. We could take a look at that area as well.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good.
Yeah, just let us know. I mean, it sounds like, from everything that you gather, at least that my knowledge, the white stripe and there's arrows down, but if there's something that doesn't make sense, just let us know.
Cool, thank you.
I just have one last comment, and that is that I would like to see that driveway going into the parking area be milled out and repaved and contoured so it flows out of there and looks halfway decent. Mill it. Take a half inch out, repave it. Be done with it. It'll look nice.
Okay. Is that something, I don't know, Brian, Rob, or I guess, will you guys relay that message back to Banks? Brian or Rob?
Yeah, I can pass that along. When I talk to Brian, I'll talk to Brian and let him know that this is a concern. And I think it does need to be addressed, because that water, as Jim pointed out earlier, it's not going to go anywhere. It's staying still. And the only thing that's going to take it away is evaporation, and that can take a while.
Yeah, you can't just fill it. Just do a quick, in that case, it's such a big issue, big area, you may have to do 2 milling runs. It may even be able to done 1 run, but it'll look nice.
Yeah, we can have that conversation with Banks, and again, first of all, McCormick Taylor is going to make sure initially that it was graded properly, because if it's not graded properly, then there's our issue right there, and that's going to be on Banks. But we're going to double check all that.
Good luck on that. It's not Banks' issue. It's never contoured. They had nothing to go by.
All right. We will put that into the conversation. Rob and Abdul has that comment, Warren. So we will look at all of those things.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, guys? Any other comments, questions? All right, and I know not that we need to have, a full army, but when Robert or Abdul, I'm not sure, or the person from McCormick Taylor that lives close by, when we go outside, and Brian will be out there, we go outside with them to look at these issues. If any of you like to participate in that, please let Brian know. and he can give you the time and date that they will be out there, you are more than welcome to come out and walk the site and have the discussion at that time.
Yeah, I can just plan on sending that out to the committee whenever we know, and you all are more than welcome to come join us.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to coordinate with Brian on making sure that, Brian, you're out there specifically. I wanted to make sure that when our team is out there, that they were talking with you directly and making sure you know what they're out there and actually being on site as well. So we'll be in discussions on when we can get that set up.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Is there anything else, guys? If not, look forward to emails from Brian or emails from me, sharing some of the things that McCormick Taylor can get to us via email in terms of the questions. All right. Thank you guys for Zooming, and hopefully we can meet in person next month, but we're taking it month by month.
Very effective meeting.
Thanks. Great. Take care, guys.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much, Deb.
Brian.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Brian,
Yes.
I'm going to call you, okay?
Okay, sounds good.